You're listening to Talking Hoosier Baseball, a podcast by fans from the IUBase.com website for anyone wanting more info on the 2019 Big Ten champion Indiana University baseball program. Today is Tuesday, May 21st, 2019. I'm Josh Bennett, joined by stats guru Cassidy Palmer, master of the RPI Carl James, and the man whose voice led the crowd in cheering on a title, Chris Feeney. Now, before we start the show, we had a significant oversight in last week's podcast that we need to remedy. So for that, I'll turn it over to Carl.
Thank you, Josh. Due to his athletic eligibility status, we failed to recognize Scotty Bradley for our senior day discussion, despite the fact that he's been with the Hoosiers for 4 years and graduated with his class. So this will be the second time that I have publicly apologized to Scotty Bradley on this podcast. Okay, well, now Scotty Bradley from Pennington, New Jersey, is the son of a former major leaguer and Princeton coach, Scott Bradley. Scotty sat out most of his sophomore year due to injury after making the Big Ten all-freshman team in 2016. He came roaring back in 2018 after his injury, hitting .326. Scotty struggled for a good deal of this season until he was put back into the starting lineup against Maryland and caught fire. He's now hitting .272 on the year with 9 home runs. A few highlights for Scotty in his career include this ridiculous scoop in foul territory at first base at Evansville. I mean, I'd heard about it, then I had to go see a video that was recorded because I don't think the game was actually telecast, but someone had got video of it. And it was just absolutely amazing what he did by getting the ball basically behind the runner. Because even though he's a left-handed hitter, he's a right-handed thrower. So he plays first base with his left hand, it was amazing. He also had a walk-off single against Northern Illinois last year. That was a pretty impressive hit and a fun day. And of course, that weekend in Maryland, including the Sunday where he went 4 for 5 with a homer. Now, I've had the pleasure of being in media scrums with players throughout this year, and I can tell you no one matches Scotty in his poise and demeanor with the press. He's a really great guy. And a huge positive for this team. So congratulations, Scotty. And once again, apologies to the oversight. Now I will hand it back to Josh to recap an amazing week that will be remembered for Hoosier baseball.
Yeah, absolutely, Carl. But first, the Hoosiers got off to a rough start with some sloppy play in the midweek hosting number 9 Louisville. Fortunately for the Hoosiers, the Cardinals were playing the same way, and the Hoosiers stayed in the game late and played their second consecutive extra inning game. But unfortunately, this one had the same results as the previous and ended in a loss.
I was just really disappointed in our infield play and just things that we haven't done in a long time. Just knucklehead things we haven't done in a long time. Not anticipating plays, not communicating. And the reality of it is, like, that's their offense. They slap on the ground. They try to just kind of beat ground balls out and run, and that's fine if that's the way they're going to play offense. But they knew that coming into it. It's not like it was a great shock. And, we were just not very good. Not very good and really in any area besides pitching, which I thought did a good job.
So that was the midweek affair, but the focus turned quickly to the early weekend series that loomed only 2 days out. The Hoosiers knew that down a game and a half to Michigan with 3 games left to play, any outside chance of the league title would require a sweep of Rutgers at the Bart. Even if that happened, Nebraska would be required to help out by taking 2 of 3 from Michigan and Lincoln. While the records in RPI look good for IU, on paper the matchup didn't necessarily. Rutgers has 3 solid starting pitchers, including 2 left-handers who seem to provide a challenge for the Hoosiers' left-handed dominant lineup. Put that together with the fact that the Hoosiers had not swept a Big Ten series since the opener with Iowa. That challenge seemed a bit daunting, at least to those of us in the bleachers. Thursday night wasn't easy, especially after an over 2-hour rain delay before the second inning. But as Chris said in his recap on the site, the Hoosiers' stars shined bright, and the team took home a 7-5 win. Shortly after the game, Nebraska knocked off Michigan, but it wasn't like the Hoosiers were paying any attention to that.
Just give me production. You have to be able to produce.
It looked like
Sounds like something just happened in there.
I think Nebraska.
Yeah, Nebraska just won.
Yeah.
No, we're not paying attention. We're not paying attention. No. What a cop-out, man.
So Friday wasn't quite as dramatic. Nebraska took care of Michigan in the early game, and Tanner Gordon took care of Rutgers at the BART. The Hoosiers' bats exploded for 11 runs, including 4 bombs. The first of those, hit by Matt Gorski, was number 86 on the season and set the Hoosiers' single-season team record. Tanner Gordon went 7 innings, giving up only 2 runs on 3 hits, and didn't give up a walk. Much later in the evening, Michigan did manage to pull out Game 2 of the doubleheader to conclude the series in Lincoln, setting the stage for the final game for the Hoosiers on Saturday. A win would mean a championship and the 1 seed in the Big Ten tourney. A loss would mean second place and a 2 seed. The seniors were honored in a pregame ceremony before Andrew Sofrank took the mound. The first inning was rough with multiple hits leading to a run, but Sally got out of the inning, leaving the bases loaded. The Hoosiers were hitless through 3. Matt Lloyd explained the team's struggles up to that point in his postgame.
Got a little bit away from our approaches to start the game. Kind of, we talked before the game, talking about no heroes and stuff like that. I feel like before we got that first hit, it was people trying to kind of tie the ball game for us, especially being out 1-0 start. But just fortunate that hit it in that spot, I guess, and ended up being a hit.
So once the order turned over, Matt got things started with what shows up in the scoreboard as a line drive, and the offense erupted for 6 runs. Rutgers shortstop Kevin Welsh would later hit his 3rd homer of the series, the season, and his career to cut the lead to 3, but that would be all the Scarlet Knights offense could muster. Sofrank then handed the ball to Gabe Bierman to start the 7th.
Yeah, and I really want to commend Gabe Bierman. Gabe lost his dad last week on Friday. What an incredible job by him. What incredible resiliency and toughness. And obviously, we've prayed very hard for Gabe. And he's a great player. And he comes in and just really settled things, right? And settled things. We were able to kind of tack a few more on. But when Gabe came in, that game was still within striking distance. There's not. That game was not over. The score is not indicative, and I didn't really even breathe a sigh of relief until a double play ball there in the 9th. Yeah, Gabe's transformation this year has been incredible. One of the better ones I've seen in my coaching career, and I'm just really proud of him and happy for him that he could go out there and finish that ball game and represent his family the way I know.
Yeah, in the top of the 9th, the Hoosiers would hold a 10-run lead, but as Coach said, with everything on the line, you really weren't in celebration mode until a double play brought the Hoosiers to within 1, Rutgers out of clinching the title. So Gabe gets the strikeout. The dog pile commences. Coach Mercer gets the Gatorade shower, and everyone gets their picture taken with the trophy. And I do mean everyone. So on Monday, several baseball media outlets have the Hoosiers ranked in the top 25, with D1 Baseball having the Hoosiers ranked at 21. Earlier today, the Big Ten handed out its yearly hardware, and 9 Hoosiers received Big Ten accolades. We want to acknowledge and congratulate them on that honor. Drew Ashley was selected as Indiana's Sportsmanship Award winner. Grant Richardson was named to the All-Freshman team. Eli Dunham was selected to the 3rd team. We had 3 Hoosiers named to the 2nd team: Scotty Bradley, Cole Barr, and Matt Gorski. 2 Hoosiers were named to the 1st team, with Andrew Sofrank as a pitcher and Matt Lloyd as a utility player. IU took home 2 of the 4 major awards, and it shouldn't have come as a surprise to anyone that Coach Mercer was named Coach of the Year after winning the league outright in his first season. And junior lefty Andrew Saalfrank landed the Big Ten Pitcher of the Year award. Congrats to him, the fourth Hoosier to take that honor, and the first one since Friday night Joey did back in 2014. So congrats, gentlemen. Well deserved. Puts a nice bow on the regular season. So now the Hoosiers are matched up against 8 seed Iowa tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Eastern to start their quest for a Big Ten tourney title. So let's dig into our Hoosier highlights for this championship pod. For me, it was being able to share and enjoy this moment with Nancy and the boys and having our entire crew together. It doesn't happen often, but the stars aligned on this one, and a really special memory was made. Glad I got to share that with each and every one of you. So, Cass, what's your Hoosier highlight for the week?
So I kind of split mine into two, with the first one being off the field highlight. Just meeting so many people, hanging out with everybody. I don't get over there as often as I would like, and I feel like every time I do, it's special. I mean, from watching the game with such amazing people, tailgating on Saturday, waiting out the lightning delay. It was just so fun the entire time, and I want to thank everybody who was involved in making it such a fantastic weekend. On the field, I'm going to go with the team's response to the Rutgers home run on Thursday. That was such a key point, really, throughout the whole weekend. They could have chosen to not get up for it. Yeah, they were guaranteed into the Big Ten tourney. They're pretty well guaranteed into the NCAA. But they got up. They immediately responded. They scored more in the next inning, and without that response, if this is a loss that first game, Hoosiers wouldn't be Big Ten champs. So to me, that was a big highlight, seeing that response in a game that meant more bragging rights than just about anything else. So, Chris, what was your highlight this weekend?
All right, thanks, Cass. For me, it obviously has all to do with Saturday. Going into the game, I had a bad feeling. I spoke about it. People told me to stop talking about it. But again, Mets experience. I've had these things where you're playing a team that has, is dead, has nothing to play for, and they beat you when you have everything to play for. It happened to me twice at Shea Stadium, and and we walk in the building and we go down 1-0 right away. And I was just sick. I was like, don't even tell me this is going to happen. And then inning after inning after inning, we can't get a hit. And I'm like, this is going to happen. We're going to walk out of here miserable. And sure enough, as we're sitting there, bang, Matt Lloyd gets a hit. Now the no hit is gone. Then I'm just begging for home runs. And Carr's like, nah, let's get like 11 singles. I'm like, all right, that'll work too, I guess. Obviously, I'm always rooting for the home run. But that inning ended up going single, walk, double, walk, strikeout, single, walk. They even tried to pick off Feynman, and they threw it away. I guess his speed freaked them out. And then an Ashley single for 6 runs. I mean, it was basically what Carl, ordered up and what I was settling for. But a grand slam and a 2-run homer or a whole bunch of Mercer ball, I'll take it either way. And it was a huge relief. That inning was definitely my Hoosier highlight. I know the game wasn't over then, but to me it kind of was. I just felt a lot more calm and a lot more safe and a lot okay that we were going to see that dog pile. So that was definitely my Hoosier highlight. What about you, Carl?
Well, like some of the others, I had two. The first was personal. I was in the media scrum when on Thursday night when Nebraska won that first game. It was just so perfectly timed because like 3 minutes before that, Coach had gone on a 2-minute thing about focusing on what you're doing at the particular moment, and then the whole team is just cheering behind it because Nebraska won that game. It was just too funny. But my on the field one, I really point to Big Ten Pitcher of the Year Andrew Saalfrank. In the first inning on Saturday, he gives up a double and a single to give up that first run right off the bat. Then the bases get loaded. And you heard from the coach afterwards that they had changed up Sal Frank's repertoire a little bit, mostly because he was facing a primarily right-handed lineup. So they really focused more on the four-seam fastball. But he figured it out, and he got out of that inning only one run of damage. And while it basically set up the situation where the 6-run inning that Chris was talking about was a real big deal, because it was only a 6-1 lead at that point, and then the team was able to take care of business after that. Well, now Chris is going to give out this week's red belts. Chris.
All right, thanks, Carl. First of all, obviously, we're handing out championship belts to the whole damn team, the coaching staff, everybody who works in the building, anybody involved with the damn program. It was beautiful. 5 years wait was a long time, and to see that dog pile, everybody gets a championship belt. But for the red belts, since we still have to give those out too, Matt Gorski is going to get our defensive Tony Butler Award red belt for that miraculous, spectacular catch in left center field. He, took off, covered a ton of ground, made the slide, got the ball. It was no joke. The angle I had, I believe I was down the right field line a little bit, so it was really cool. Like basically, you see where he started, where he got. It was Matt Gorski. I mean, we're running out of words to talk about this guy, but an amazing catch. He's going to get the Tony Butler Defensive Award. For the offensive red belt, for the Alex Dickerson Award, obviously a lot of choices. I mean, we scored 30 runs or whatever we scored on the week. But for me, the absolute biggest hit of the week, the absolute biggest hit of the series, the absolute biggest hit of winning this regular season was Matt Lloyd's home run. After Gorski doubled or singled, whatever you want to call that, whatever that was. Lloyd went deep, broke up the tie game, gave us the lead. We never gave it up. And big-time players show up, right? I mean, I put that in. Max couldn't do the recap. I had to actually do a home recap. Felt a little strange. And there was nothing else in my mind. And big-time players stepped up here. You know what I'm saying? Gorski, Lloyd, and whoever else it might have been. But that home run gives it for Matt Lloyd. That home run definitely gets him the red belt. For the pitching red belt, I think a lot of us have heard the details of what happened. Sorry for your loss to the BMN family, of course. But what he did in those 3 innings, after he pitched the 7th, I wanted him out of there. Again, I was sitting with a call. I think I said to call, get him out of there. You know what I'm saying? That inning was good. Get him out of there. I didn't want anything bad happening. And he came back out there and he dominated the 8th. And then in the 9th, yeah, there was a hit here and a hit there. But couldn't have been happier for him to be able to scream the way he did. He spun around towards center field and screamed. He spun around back to Feynman and screamed. Gabe Bierman is a rock star, okay? What he did was incredible, and it was emotional to even watch. So Gabe gets the Joey Donato Red Belt Award, and Josh is going to talk about some future Hoosiers that we were able to see. And trust me, guys, you're lucky that Gabe Bierman's going to be your teammate. What do you got, Josh?
Yeah, Chris, we were able to head out to one more game at the BART this season to watch Linton play Edgewood, where we were able to catch 4 future Hoosiers play. Josh Pine and Kip Fugers play for Linton, and Ethan Vicrumba and Luke Hayden play for Edgewood. Pine's a sophomore. He was 2 for 4 with 2 runs and hit a shot to straightaway center field in his first at bat that Vicrumba made a really nice play on after covering some serious ground. Fugers is a junior. He was 2 for 3 with 2 runs scored, 3 RBI, a walk, a triple, and hit an absolute laser into the IU bullpen for a 2-run home run. Vicrumba is a senior, and he was 1 for 2 with the run scored, a walk, and a hit by pitch. He played center field, looked pretty good in the outfield. And Hayden is a sophomore, and he threw a complete game with 9 Ks on 121 pitches. 81 of those went for strikes, so he had a 67% strike rate. He was really pounding the zone, which was good to see. He hit 92 in the first or second inning, but was consistently sitting 88-90. Had a pretty good curveball from our seat anyway, and was able to hit 89 in the 7th inning after throwing all those pitches. So needless to say, there's plenty to be excited for with these 4 young men headed to the BART over the next few seasons. And I have to say it was really enjoyable to just watch a baseball game and not really worry about the outcome.
You've got mail. 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 You've got mail.
to unmute. There we go. So it's mailbag time, and seems like there's one question that's really been on everybody's mind lately. Do the Hoosiers still have a chance, even just any teeny tiny chance, of hosting a regional? Carl?
I think I've heard this question before. Well, yes, a chance. Is there a chance? It's not impossible, but, big but, it would require not only a Big Ten tourney championship, but a lot of other tournaments around the country to go just the right way. And one of those things already went the wrong way just this morning, with Texas A&M beating Florida in the opening round of the SEC tourney. That was a case where you had a team in the SEC that is sub 500, but with a hosting style RPI, managing to survive. Now, granted, Florida was trying to survive too, but they're a bubble team, not a hosting team. So, quite frankly, I'm not really entertaining the possibility of the Hoosiers hosting. It would require so many different things to happen the right way, and that's generally not the way baseball tends to fall. So that's my answer. Is it possible? I can't say it's a complete impossibility. It's just it's a likelihood, and if I had to put a number on it, I would say 5% chance. If you now put in the Texas A&M thing, probably drops to about a 4% chance. All right. So, Cass, what stood out for you in the stats this week?
Well, the first thing that really stood out, I went to add up the regular season wrap on the home runs for mental health and the K-Cancer numbers. And we all know the home run, 90 of those home runs, which led the country, which is absolutely nuts. But at $1 per home run, that's some pretty easy math that even I can handle at $90. The strikeouts, though, actually coming into, I guess, through last night, since there have been some games today, we're at 13th in the country, tied for 13th in the country at 528, which I know there are some people doing different amounts for strikeouts, but at a quarter per strikeout, that's $132. And I'm going to be quite honest when I say here that when I put this together, I was not anticipating the Hoosiers being top 15 in the country in both categories. Was not really expecting that with the turnover that this team had, but that's even more kudos to this team, this coaching staff, for being able to pull that off, especially with the strikeouts, with some guys who weren't normally strikeout guys who were getting those strikeouts. So that's where those numbers stand at the end of the regular season. And then I just took a look at some regular season ending things, like the different records. So like when the Hoosiers score somewhere in the first 3 innings, anywhere in the first 3 innings, the team finished the regular season at 29-9. So if they scored in those first 3 innings, most of the time it was a win. If they didn't score in those first 3 innings over the regular season, they were 7-10. So most of the time they did score in those first 3 innings, but when they didn't, it was kind of a toss-up as to what the outcome of the game would be. And I was also interested to see that the record when leading through the 8th inning stayed pretty well the same from the midpoint of the season on. The Hoosiers, when leading through the 8th, ended the season 34-1, with that one being Coastal Carolina. When they weren't leading through the 8th, they were 2-18. Not so great for those late game comebacks there. And speaking of late game comebacks, I also looked at the final regular season update on runs per inning. I was actually surprised to see it. For the most part, it actually evened out pretty well. And it ended up being the 5th inning with the highest proportion, highest percentage of runs scored. That surprised me a little bit because it had been those 1st and 3rd innings. But the 9th inning was still a bit of an issue at just 5% of the runs were scored in the 9th inning. And the Hoosiers actually scored 7 fewer runs in the 9th inning than they gave up in the 9th inning, accounting for the games where either our offense never came up to bat because we were ahead, or our defense didn't go out because the other team was ahead and it was away. So accounting for that, that's still just 5% of the total runs scored in the 9th inning. So that's still a little something to be concerned about. If the Hoosiers are not leading by the end of the 8th, things get a little bit dicey. But with that offense, especially the first 3 innings, first 5 innings, it's very rare that they're not leading through that 8th inning, or at least tied. So that was good to see that evened out a little bit. When you see those big peaks, that's usually not a great sign when you're looking at the course of a season. And I wanted to give just a quick lefty righty overview for the team, because I had that question several times over the weekend. And unfortunately, my stats were not completely up to date at that point for lefty-righty. But kind of surprisingly enough, the Hoosiers are batting better against lefties, batting .270 compared to .251 against righties. Now, to note there, the team has seen about half the at-bats against lefties as they have against righties. So small numbers are going to play into that a bit, but when you're still looking at more than 600 at-bats, those numbers are pretty stable. And across the board, walk rate is solid at 11%. Strikeout rate is actually lower against lefties than righties. Still about 25% of the plate appearances, but it's lower than it is for against righties. A home run every 20 plate appearances as opposed to 29 against righties. So the power is there, hitting for average, walking, all of that's there against lefties, which kind of surprised me, but is different from a few weeks ago when lefty and righty were about even. But I got that question enough over the weekend that I wanted to give the most up-to-date numbers that I could. So Carl will now take a look at the Hoosiers' postseason resume.
Yes. So the postseason resume, it's a 2 seed, folks. I can sit there and run through all kinds of details, and I'll go through a couple, but this is a 2 seed resume. Indiana has dropped today to 31 in the RPI from 30 as far as ranks goes, but that's because of how close 28 through 31 are right now. The lead over 32 Indiana State is actually pretty significant by the RPI numbers. But more importantly, if we go look at the what we call the RPI team sheet, the team has a 5-9 record against opponents in the top 50 of the RPI. 12-5 against the next 50, which if you add that up is 17-12. So it's a really good top 100 number. It's a okay top 50 number. And if you look at what they can do in the case of the best possible scenario coming out of the Big Ten, I'd say their best effort could get them to 21 in the RPI, which is 5 RPI slots out of hosting. Now you combine that with a Big Ten championship. Is there a possibility that the commission, the the group might want to get it in, maybe, but then you'd have to bump somebody. And I just don't know that there's going to be enough bumps available to give Indiana a slot. So with that, I think at the top end, you're looking 2 seed. At the bottom end, yes, the team could fall to 34, maybe even 35 in the RPI. And that cutoff line for 2 seed is 32. But that doesn't bother me, again, with the Big Ten championship. I think a Big Ten championship, you're in the upper end of that 3 seed RPI range. That's a 2 seed. So I think in any case, you end up landing at a 2 seed. And that's where I see this team. Obviously, there's a lot still to play for in the Big Ten tournament. It's your league. You've won the league. You're expected to win. There's a lot to play for. I for one want to update my Big Ten championship T-shirt to a 2019 edition. So there's lots to play for.
Carl, I tried to get his shirts, Carl. I went to 3 different places. Nobody had them. I was all ready to buy us the shirts that we would have them for this podcast, but nobody. I was there at 10 a.m. I was at TIS at 10 a.m. in the morning after work, but I couldn't get them. But I tried for us.
I actually made calls from Missouri, trying to get my hands on one. I called the different stores from Missouri.
And no good, right? They weren't lying to me, were they? Okay.
No. Okay.
Maybe they were hiding them in the back. No, I agree, Carl. Absolutely, with something to play for. Are you kidding me? Especially, we were just going over the stuff about 2009's title team, and 10 years later, I mean, this is something they'll take forever. Another trophy. I mean, they already got one. That 09 team didn't have one already. To have 2 trophies, to be this group connected together forever for both, absolutely something to play for.
Yep. So with that, tomorrow morning starts the 2019 Big Ten baseball tournament in Omaha. Chris has the preview of the bracket opposite of the Hoosiers.
All right. Thanks, Carl. Let's see. So 10 a.m., breakfast with the Big Ten, bagels with the Big Ten, whatever you want to call it. 10 a.m. Eastern. That's another thing. All the times that I'm going to say are Eastern. And if you ever see times on iubase.com, those are Eastern times. Because some of the charts you're going to see that come out from TD Ameritrade, those are in Central Time, just so they don't throw you off. So we got Illinois versus Maryland, 10 a.m. Oh, and another thing, the RPI numbers I have are from last night while I was at work. Okay. I know the RPIs change all the time, but the ones I'm giving you now were from when I did this. So Illinois was a RPI number 22. Ranked 3 in the Big Ten. And they're going against Maryland, who are ranked 6th. And they were RPI number 72. All right. So Illinois is obviously the higher seed. They're 36-17. They're 18-13 away from home. I did combine neutral and away. In their last 10 games, they're 8-2. But they did finish the season against Purdue and Michigan State. So take that into consideration with their 8-2. They have 2 big time 1 and 2 starters. We know that. We know a lot about Illinois. The last 2 times we played them, we lost to them in the Big Ten tournament last year, and then we lost 2 out of 3 to them this year. Okay, so they're going to be playing up against Maryland, who is 28-27, 17-12 away from home, neutral or away games. They were 12-12 in the Big Ten. There's quite a few 12-12 teams in the Big Ten. They've actually won 4 in a row, though. They had to sweep Iowa to even get in. So that's pretty impressive to me. Hunter Parsons, obviously, is their big-time number 1. He'll be going against Fisher, in game 1. It's nice to know one of those have to lose. Let's see. The Maxwell Costas, he just won Freshman of the Year. He's a big bat for Maryland. And as far as this situation, out of these 4 teams that I'm going to be talking about, we'll go to the next game right after this. We're only going to possibly have to play 2 of them. We might only have to play 1 of them. But, so it gets a little complicated. I put a guide to the Big Ten tournament on the website, which you could check out whenever you want to. It's a little easier when you read it with your eyes to have it explained to you. So at 2 p.m., unless the game goes 20 innings, which I hope it does, it would be not that I want to start my game late, but I would love for those teams to use a lot of pitchers. And so we got Michigan versus Ohio State. That's a pretty big rivalry there. Michigan, the 2 seed, 48 in the RPI. Ohio State, the 7 seed, 135 in the RPI. And this is 2:00 Eastern. You got Michigan, 38-16, 16-12 away from home. They went 5-5 in their last 10 games. I don't know if you heard, but they were first place in the Big Ten, and they went 2-4 to finish the season, and somebody caught them and took it from them, if you hadn't heard. So we know they have a great Sunday guy. Okay, that's probably their best pitcher is their Sunday starter, Jeff Criswell. Jordan Brewer, player of the year for them. Obviously, we beat them 2 out of 3 in their place this season. And the last time we played them in the tournament that I can remember was the Alex Krupa game. If there was one after that, I forgot about it. So I'm pretty sure it was the Krupa game. Walk off at the Bart. It was a beautiful game. Everyone was wearing backwards clothes and stuff like that. So they're going against Ohio State. They're 31-24, 16-14 away from home. Also 12-12 in the Big Ten. They've won 4 in a row. They swept Purdue. They had to sweep. They actually, after they swept Purdue, they still didn't know if they were in the Big Ten tournament because there was some kind of rain out, and Northwestern had to win the game after a delay, and they don't have lights in their stadium, so then they didn't know if they were even going to play the game. It was a whole mess, but Northwestern's lost, and that got the Buckeyes in, but they didn't really back in because, they had to win 4 games in a row to do that, so I wouldn't count them as backing in at all. I actually think they're a damn good 7 seed, to be honest with you. The arms and the bats that they have. The last time we played them in the series, we won the first game with Stever, and then we lost the next 2, if I have it right. I believe that's what it was. Shockingly, I guess we got Stever runs, and then no one else got any. That was a strange series. Dominic Canzone is their big back. He's a game changer. If I remember right, he got us late twice in the series in Ohio State. Garrett Burnham is a freshman arm for them. He's been their Friday guy. He's very good. And they have Seth Lonsway. He's a Sunday guy. He's very, very good. He's actually pitcher of pitcher of the week nationally this week. 14 Ks, I think, like 1 hit, 8 innings. So he's real good. And then the way this breaks down, as far as how we would play these guys, obviously 2 of these teams are going to have 2 losses. So we will not be playing them. It would be a 0-2 team or a 1-2 team. Then there'll be a 2-0 team and a 2-1 team. So depending on how we do is when we play them. All right. So we would see their 3rd starter or their midweek starter, depending on when we play them. Again, it's pretty confusing, but check it out on the site that's called the Guide to the 2010 Big Tournament. And for our side of the bracket, we're gonna have Josh take a look at it.
Yeah, thanks, Chris. You probably should have done both sides because you definitely did a better job than I'm getting ready to do. It's funny how when each person does it, they have a different approach to doing it. But I'll preview IU's side, and IU will be joined in the 1, 8, 4, and 5 seed bracket by Iowa, Nebraska, and Minnesota. First up for the Hoosiers is Iowa. The Hoosiers swept them in this season's first Big Ten series that was played in Bloomington way back in March. You might recall the Friday night matchup, which is kind of what this one's would mirror, as Paulie Milto was pitching in the 9th inning with the 2-0 lead and was over 100 pitches in the game before the Hawkeyes got a rally going and ended up tying the score. But in the bottom of the 9th, Logan Kalitha saved the evening with his walk-off single. Iowa comes into the game having lost their last 5 Big Ten games after being swept last weekend at Maryland. So they really kind of backed their way into this field. But on the season, Iowa is 6-2 in conference first game scenarios like this one would be, and IU is 4-4. In the second game, the Hoosiers will either see Nebraska or Minnesota. In the second game of the conference series, the Hoosiers are 6-2. The Huskers also have that same 6-2 record in those matchups, and the Golden Gophers have gone 3-5. Nebraska's playing pretty good baseball, having taken the last 2 series at home versus Skip's Arizona State squad and Michigan, and I personally want to thank them for the latter on that. Minnesota's taken their last 3 series, defeating Ohio State, Maryland, and Northwestern. If Indiana were to win the first 2 games, the third matchup would be against a team from the other side of the bracket, like Chris was just talking about. If one of those is a loss, it could be against any of the other 3 on our side. But the Hoosiers have been really good this season in that third game, thanks to Big Ten Pitcher of the Year, Andrew Sofrank, and have gone 7-1. So, Carl, as we start to wrap up this edition of the Championship Podcast, do you have any final thoughts?
Yes, I really have one final thought. I had the when I went up to Michigan, I actually got to see Michigan's Senior Day celebration, and it got me thinking about the various Senior Days that I've seen from the various teams that I've followed, and I saw something pretty special in IU's Senior Day celebration on this Saturday, and it was something kind of subtle, but it made me think, and that was as the players were announced and they went to the line where the families were standing, they didn't just go to their own family. They embraced every family going down the line, and you could tell, you could see, and you know we've had the fortune of getting to know some of these people, but this is one big family right now. And this team is playing together as a family. They're embracing each other's families, and that was just a moment that particularly touched me and made me proud to be a fan of this baseball program. So that's my final thought. Josh, what have you got for us?
That's perfect, Carl. Glad you brought that up. That needs to be recognized. But just it was a fun way to wrap up the regular season. So happy for the guys to be rewarded for all the hard work they put in. This has been a fun and exciting group to watch, and it seems like they're peaking at the right time, and hopefully they can keep it rolling and win a bunch more games these next few weekends. So I'm just looking forward to watching their postseason journey. Well, that will do it for the Big Ten Championship edition of Talking Hoosier Baseball. Read up on Indiana baseball at iubase.com. Follow us on Twitter at CUAtTheBart and at IUBase17. Please leave us a review on iTunes, Google Play, or Stitcher. For Cassidy Palmer, Chris Feeney, and Carl James, I'm Josh Bennett, and we'll see you at the BART or a fairly close regional.
My baby in her